On behalf of the Institute for Leadership and Strategic Foresight, welcome to So You Want to Be the Chief, a podcast for leaders.
Well, it's another great day here in Colorado, and I don't even know where else, but I have a good, I'll call him a good friend. We've known each other longer than I thought, actually. He is Chief Master Sergeant, retired. He was a command chief, Tim Bays, out on the East Coast. Chief, Tim, brother, good to see you, man. And I, okay, I gotta admit, I don't remember seeing you the last time I saw you. You were telling me
Yeah,
the
no,
other day that it was at a speaking gig that I did at Peterson, I think, and there were a lot of airmen there. But the truth is, and I've been saying this for a long time, you hang with the chief, and you'll get promoted. You were a tech sergeant at the time, if I remember right.
yep.
Yep. And look at you, you graduated and eventually you became a command chief. So congratulations and on your retirement, which hasn't been too terribly long, has it?
Yeah, it's only been about 2 years, just over 2 years. Um, and the transition has been fantastic so far. But yeah, you came in and briefed us at our NCO Academy class, and I remember sitting in the crowd and listening to you, and kind of followed you ever since then. So
Yeah, yeah.
you didn't know it, but I was there.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Were you stalking me, man?
Nope, no, just found you on Facebook. That's all.
Oh, okay. Well, and I say this every time that I start a new episode, that it's a blessing to have the technology that we have to do what we do now,
Yeah,
because you're like what 2,000 miles away or something like that,
yeah.
and we have the opportunity to say hello and to see each other, and it's all good. So, how long did you serve, Chief?
So 23 years, 8 months. Not that anybody was counting.
You weren't counting. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah.
What did you do during that whole time? I mean, I know you were a command chief eventually,
Yep.
but you did some other things in between, right?
Yeah, so I started out in CE. I was one of the few that had the advice coming in to get a guaranteed job. So I went and talked to the recruiter and was able to get a guaranteed job, and absolutely loved the civil engineer mission. Did that for a while and went on to be a tech school instructor, which was also a phenomenal job, being able to teach, the airmen more than just how to swing a hammer or, how to run a welding bead. I got to teach them how to be, adults and go into adulthood and what to do with that first duty station and really kind of pour into them. So that was an awesome assignment. Went on from there, deployed several times, Iraq, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, those places, but then got to be a first sergeant, which again, another great opportunity. And then just kind of kept moving on and became a squadron superintendent. And as I moved up, made chief and did the MSG mission support group superintendent, and then finished off as a command chief and decided I was on top,
Yeah,
so might as well go out on top.
yeah. And you're retired in Delaware, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Near the
Dover.
base, what McGuire or in that
So
area?
Dover Air Force Base.
Dover?
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. Now, is that home originally or not?
No, so home for me originally is Kansas, which
Oh,
is a long ways from here. I'll tell you, if anybody would have asked me when I joined the Air Force, hey, if you're going to join the Air Force and you're going to retire in Dover, Delaware, I would have been like, first of all, where's Delaware? I had to zoom in on the map and keep zooming in order to
yeah,
find it.
yeah,
And then, but we got here and the family fell in love with it, and I always had the mindset that they followed me around for all those years. So when it
yeah,
came time to retire, they were going to get to pick, and they wanted to stay here. So
yeah.
here we are.
And I used to go out there to McGuire often, Tim, and that for some reason I guess they don't like me anymore. But that's okay. I'm cool with it. But a beautiful country. When you think of New Jersey, you think of the Jersey Shore. You see the TV
Yeah,
shows and all that stuff, and I guess that's pretty too around the beach and all that stuff. But where you live, I mean, there's like huge fields and farming and all that kind of stuff, right?
absolutely. And when we drove in, it's not what we expected either. The East Coast, we thought it would be a little bit different, but that's one of the things we loved about Delaware is it's small town, kind of a lot of farm fields, a lot of agriculture, that kind of stuff here. But you have the beaches, which are great. And then if you want to, you can be in Baltimore in no time, New York. I'm actually going to New York this weekend to catch the Kansas City Chiefs New York Giants football game.
Oh,
But you can be there in a couple hours. You can be in DC. You can go to Philadelphia. So there's so much to do up here along the East Coast, and it's all within a couple hours. So
yeah.
we get to come back to small town living, but go enjoy the big city life.
Yeah, yeah. Now you've made the transition, and are you working now, or did you win the lottery?
I wish I would have won the lottery, but you have to play to win. That's the
Yeah, that's
unfortunate part
true.
of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm working. I'm a program manager at Century Engineering, which is a local engineering firm that's kind of a full service engineering firm. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity and get an interview with them based off of some connections, and they took a chance on me. And 2 years later, they haven't fired me yet, so I guess
Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah, you. Now, I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask anyway. So, do you miss wearing the uniform?
I do miss wearing the uniform. I don't miss physically putting the uniform on every day, but I miss what comes with wearing the uniform.
Yeah.
And the airmen and the opportunity to develop folks and just those connections and those relationships. I don't think there's anything. I think it's okay to miss that even when you go out into another job, because there's nothing that can replicate that military bond that you get. And the fortunate part about it is those connections are still there with a lot of folks, and I still get to, have opportunities to be involved with the base here. They've given me opportunities with the. I'm part of the local chamber and the military affairs committee chair, so I get to connect businesses with the base, and just met with the wing commander yesterday. Got to sit down with him for a little while, so I still get to be involved a little bit and hopefully have some impact on the airmen's lives in the
Yeah.
local community. So
Yeah, and you know the old saying, I don't know that they still say it, but when the way I grew up is we used to say that once a chief, always a chief. You
yeah,
can't take that out of your blood, and that not that you should wear the stripes and shove yourself around and all that kind of stuff, but to be a good effective chief, I think, and I'm going to ask you this in a second, but is a servant, what we call a servant leader. And I
hmm
think once you've done that for any period of time and you realize the value of it and how, I mean, there's nothing better, I don't think, than serving. Uh, you just can't get away from it. You'll find places to serve even if you don't want to. I always say I've always been a leader, always. Sometimes I didn't want to be the leader. I wanted to be the follower so that I didn't have to make any of the decisions. It didn't work out that way. But having done it for a little bit, you get used to it, and you just
hmm
you take the initiative. You see something that needs to be done, and you do it, not because you're told, but because you do it. Now, and I'm assuming you're married,
Correct. Yeah.
so for sure you do what you're told before you're told, right?
Yep. Yep. The at home commander tells me what to do, and I try to take care of it.
Yes, yes, indeed. Well, what is it that does make an effective chief in your perspective?
Yeah. So I mean, I think an effective chief has to know their people. To me, my leadership philosophy was, um, you have to be a credible leader, meaning you have to display and be the example for things that you ask folks to do. And if you don't know what you're asking them to do and you're not walking the walk with them, you lose credibility. And I think as a chief, if you want people to come to you and you want people to have respect for your answers and the guidance you're going to give them, you have to show them that you're credible, you're going to follow up, you're going to follow through. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing for me, again, and so I called this my 3 C's of leadership, and it's what I developed over time. But I think, that's the first thing is credibility. I think the second thing is you have to build connections. Everything we do is about working relationships. It's about connections with people. If I don't know my airmen and I don't know the people in my organization and what makes them tick and what they're dealing with at home, and what makes them more effective at work or what barriers are in their way, it's very hard to be an effective chief. And then the last one is you have to care. I think it's the simplest thing, but the thing that a lot of people miss. If I'm a subordinate or an airman, I'm not going to my chief if I don't think they care about what my problems are or what I have going on. And I think all those things are interconnected when it comes to credibility, connections, and care. And if you do those things, all the other stuff, whether it's business operations or effectiveness and efficiency, all those things are going to work themselves out in your organization. But to be an effective chief, you got to be credible, you got to connect, and you got to care. And that's kind of how I operated.
I'm gonna write a book next year about caring and how you care. One of the things that it seems to me, Tim, and maybe you've had the same experience, and please guide me if you don't, you haven't.
Sure.
But when we a lot of times with people, uh, let me put it this way: I know few leaders or people who call themselves leaders who won't say that they don't care. They all say, I do care.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do the analysis, how do you care? And that's what the book is going to be based on. How do you care? How do you show that you care? Yeah, sometimes it's like, you can say all you want. We all
Mm-hmm.
say it. It's
Yeah.
up on the wall, right? Care. First sergeant cares. Okay.
Yeah.
But how do you show it? In my perspective, to Tim, and my experience, it depends on each person.
It
How
does.
I care, how I show that I care for Tim Bays is different than how I'm going to show how I care for Bob Vasquez, because they're two different
Mm-hmm.
peoples, and each of them has different values and experiences and all that kind of stuff. So let me, uh, I care because I do this for all of my people. Well, yeah, but what about those other three that don't
Mm-hmm.
see that? They don't even understand the language,
Yeah.
because they can get to that point, especially, I think we have a pretty diverse uh, population in the military. And, even the language, some of the things that you may say that you think you're showing to how you care about me may be offensive. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be that. I hope it's not that extreme, but it could be, because what you just said, man, that does not go well in my culture.
Hmm. Yeah, Bob, I think you're spot on. And you watch a lot of leaders, and you can tell the difference real quick if they know how to manage processes, because that's where you do one size fits all. You can manage processes that way, but people are complicated. They're different. Everybody has different issues, and you have to apply exactly what you described, that situational leadership when you're caring for people. And it has to be situation specific, because you know everybody, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You can have the smartest, most outgoing leader up there. They can have issues going on at home or behind the scenes that you don't know about. And so everybody needs somebody to care for them, whether you're at the highest echelon of leadership or the airman that's brand new that doesn't know how to lace up their boots yet. You've got to figure that out, and that situation is going to be different for everybody. And then how do you care? I think one of the things we hear care, the first thing a lot of people think about is, oh, you're soft because you're talking about care. You just want to hug everybody. They get a hug on the 1st and 15th of every month when they get a paycheck. Here's your hug. But care sometimes is having a tough conversation and saying, hey, you're just not cutting it, right? Here's where you need to grow. Here's where you need to get better. And if we're not willing to have those conversations, we're not really caring for that person. If you're just always telling them that everything's great, that doesn't really help them. And so sometimes care is a size 12, and you gotta get into people a little bit, and that's okay. But there's a way to do that that's respectful and helps them grow. And I think you have to really pay attention. But that's where that connection comes in. If you don't know your people, it's really hard to care for them.
And the opposite is the opposite, I think, Tim. That when you don't have the guts to tell someone, to correct someone, that's the other C. There's
Yeah,
four C's there, the correction part.
yeah,
If when you don't have the guts to do that, to correct someone, really, you're not doing them any favor.
yeah.
McGuire. There was a McGuire at the NCO Academy graduation one time. I had been traveling a lot, and I'd been doing a lot of those graduation events or some kind of ceremonial events, and I was wearing my mess dress. I was wearing it out. I literally wore out a mess dress, if you can believe that. But I had bought this bow tie with the little clips. I don't know if you ever had one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
that was the stupidest thing anybody ever created. But I had worn it out. The clips were
Mm-hmm.
so weak that they could barely hold on to the collar. But I had, how us Chiefs are, man. I could do it one more time, just one more time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
until you fail. But so I was at McGuire, and I had it, and I said it'll work for just this one night. When I get back home, I'll buy it anyway. So I put it on. I get to the event, and I at the ballroom there at the club. I started
Mm-hmm.
at the back, going toward the front, shaking hands and kissing babies and anything else that was there, and because that was what I usually did. And when I got up to the front of the room, this '06 comes up and introduces himself, and we shake hands and all. And he comes over and whispers at me, "Chief, do you know that you don't have a tie on?"
Oh no.
Holy crap! I don't. Oh man! And I look back to where I started, and you've been in that ballroom plenty of
Yeah.
times. I know
Yeah.
it was sitting on the floor, way back there, and it kind of broke my heart. I gotta say, Chief, because I I saw a lot of people. I met a lot of people along that way, and no one had the guts to tell me, Chief,
Yeah.
you don't have a tie on. And
Yeah.
I was there to talk about that, about caring,
Yeah.
and I did it, I think, in a professional way. But I thought, man, it would have been so good if somebody, not the colonel, not the '06, but some
Yeah.
airman at the very beginning would have told me, hey, Chief, you don't have a tie on, but and
Yep.
that's again the opposite, I think. Well, yeah,
Hmm.
but we care so much we don't want to embarrass him. Bullshit. Embarrass me because
Hmm.
I'm going to be embarrassed worse if you don't do that for me.
Yeah.
And in the opposite or the other side of it, as a leader, whether you're a chief or not, I think it's a respectful thing to do. Take
Yeah.
care of that person. Hey,
Yeah.
your hair's messed up, or what is that? The parsley in your teeth.
Yeah.
Tell me, man. So I don't.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm going to take that picture with that crap all over my teeth, and it'll be all over
Yeah.
CNN and everything.
Yeah, Bob, and I'll give you an opposite side of that. So as a young airman, not a young airman, a young staff sergeant, I was in an organization where so it was when I was a tech school instructor, and the commander came out to a commander's call and was walking around briefing all the students. And I used to hold my students to a standard, right? They're students, it's tech school, and so hands in the pockets was a no-go, as you know, right, at that time. And the commander stood up and was walking around and briefing everybody, and he had his hands in his pockets the whole time. And I was like, well, how can I correct my students when the commander's up here doing this? And so I went to the commander afterwards, and I was very respectful, very polite. Said, hey, sir, I just want you to know that, something I noticed is you had your hand in your pocket while you're up there, and it's something that I'm constantly correcting my students on. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that, that's something we're doing. And if you can be aware of that, it's, no big deal. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. Well, later that day, I got called in by the senior and got told that I'm not to, directly approach the commander and correct him and all kinds of other words. Anyway, point is that culture did not allow for that correction. And so we as leaders have to create that culture where that airman feels comfortable coming up and saying, "Hey, chief, your bow tie fell off. You might want to go grab that." But when we don't create that culture, especially in a military organization where you can be a little more strict with things. People don't feel like they can come up to you, and so I think you're spot on. And I think we as leaders have to create that, whether it's in the civilian sector or the military, that culture of crosstalk and open communication.
Yeah.
And when you lose that, you have the chief walk around the ballroom with their bow tie off because everybody's afraid to to maybe
Yeah.
come say something.
Yeah, and that really sucks to have that type of culture, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's created by a sense of trust, don't you? That we
Hmm.
trust each other enough that I can tell the boss, I can tell whomever, the general stuff, and he's
Yeah.
not going to kill me. And you've been at the level where you need to know that stuff, or we
Yeah.
are going to die. Someone's going to die, and you'd
Yeah.
rather know it than let somebody die because we were afraid to tell each other. And uh,
Hmm.
I don't. I won't say that it's difficult because it's not. I'm trying to remember the word that people use lately. Authentic. You want to be authentic. You want to be open. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
You can tell me anything,
Yeah.
but you did say with due respect.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
stupid thing is to go into the boss and say, "Boss, you suck.
Yeah.
You just lost. You're not gonna. He's not gonna
Yeah.
listen. She's not gonna listen to you at all. From then on,
Yep.
there's no conversation, no communication happening. But you can do it in a respectful way, boss. This is what, like you just said. Maybe you should consider this, boss, because this is what you're
Yeah.
doing. You do whatever you want, but at least I'm telling you, and
Yeah.
I'm alerting you to it.
Yep. And it's okay as leaders to realize that we have blind spots. We have things that we do that we may not realize we're doing. And if we don't allow people to bring that to our attention, then we're never going to get better. And the minute we think we can't get better because we're already doing everything right, probably time to move on and do something else.
Yes, yeah. Chief, you got a brand new chief base coming in to your squadron. What's the best advice you can give him or her, if it's a her, uh,
Mm.
to succeed? Brand new chief, just put it on 2 days ago.
Yeah. Listen to your folks. You're coming in as the chief. People are going to look to you for guidance, and you have that chief stripe on that carries a lot of weight. So people are going to look to you for guidance, but you can't give them guidance if you don't know what's going on. So you got to listen. And that would be my biggest piece of advice. I've seen so many leaders come into an organization that already have these conceptions, that wherever they got that idea, whether they talked to, somebody that used to be there, or, they have their own ideas, but they came in and they didn't listen to their people. And, one thing that we see, and you see it too, Chief, I hated when a new chief would come in and be like, I don't like the word quarterbacked on EPRs anymore, so that's going away. And, they come in with these little preferences and all these changes. Just listen to your folks before you do that. Have some conversations, get to know them, build that credibility as the chief. But if you come in right away, they're already looking to you for answers. Listen to them before you start giving answers. I think that'd be the biggest piece of advice I'd give them.
And it's an interesting thing because I've been around a long time, but that's the type of advice we used to get back in my day,
Mm-hmm.
Chief. Look around, observe, figure out what's going on before you start changing things. Now,
Yeah.
and we're addressing chiefs in particular, enlisted people, senior enlisted to begin with, but the worst ones, okay, officers, if you're listening, you're worse, because I think, and I've trained a lot of officers,
Yeah.
several thousands, and somewhere along the way, I think they either learn or they're told, go in and change everything.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are as enlisted people saying, "Oh crap, here we go again.
Yeah.
New
Yep. Here's
boss.
another
What are we
round of
going to do? We're going
changes.
to change the color of the buildings are going to go from brown to green or green to
Yep.
brown or whatever because it's a preference." And that's depending on a bunch of different things. That's probably not the first thing to do. You're right. Go
Yeah.
out and talk to people, find out where they're coming from, and again, develop the trust that they will talk to you. I
Yeah.
remember it, and especially as a first sergeant, uh, hanging out with the back shop crews at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that know the CE guys that are loading the pallets, they're loading, doing all of this stuff at 2 o'clock in the morning. You go have a coffee with them, they're going to sit down and tell you all kinds of things,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that no one knows or would know because it's not going to filter up to the boss. But they will do it because, to some degree, that's a sense of trust, I guess. That
Yeah.
here's the chief sitting around and talking to us and listening to us. But that's what you need to know to be effective. And I know you've had experiences with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, those you know, those late night visits somewhere where they're not expecting you to be there. And, I used to go when I was a command chief, I would go over to the dining facility and I would just sit down at a random table of airmen. And most of the time, especially if they're new airmen, they didn't even know what a command chief was at that point. And so I would sit down and just have a conversation. I would learn more getting a coffee in the morning from the coffee shop on base and from stopping by the DFAC and just sitting down with airmen than I would learn about the culture of the base anywhere else throughout the day because it's unfiltered, it's raw information from the airmen. I'm not going back and attacking anybody. I'm not going to their chief or their commander. I'm just trying to gather information because I need the pulse of my people so that I can properly, break down barriers and put them in positions to be successful. And that's where I'd find it out, standing in line at the coffee shop or, just randomly. So I think those conversations are important, and you have to go in and not be afraid to sit down with folks and hear their feedback.
Be honest, and I know you will be because you're that kind of guy. What do you think about what's happening in particularly the Air Force, but throughout the military, with this back to basics mentality, where I just saw just a couple of days ago something about we're going to start addressing haircuts. I thought we did that already.
Yeah.
And actually, being at the Air Force Academy, I still go up there. I'm not employed by them anymore, but I still go up there, and I wonder sometimes, do we have any dress and appearance regs anymore? Because, and I know they're not regs, instructions, whatever we call them,
Yeah.
because they're not like, you know, my first sergeant would never let me walk outside the building with some of the hair that I see on the guys
Hmm.
in particular. Women is tough for me because I don't know the rules a lot of times because
Yeah.
I'm not a female, but guys is to me it's a little bit easier. But we're talking about we need to go back to the future. I think that's what you're using the term that we're using. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I can tell you, it got very difficult towards the end of my active duty career to police the standards because the standards were changing so much and so rapidly, and it got to the point where people in leadership positions we're not really aware of what all the standards and the rules were. And so as a result to that, people stopped enforcing them. I think we have to have discipline. You have to have standards in the military. I mean, that's just, it's inherent to how they operate, and it's for good reason. There's reason behind that. But I will say on the flip side of that, um, we can't have so many different variations to the regulations that we don't know what applies and what doesn't. But we also have to listen to our folks and change where necessary. And I remember being in Afghanistan, going on convoys, and I'd be like, it doesn't make any sense. We have this regulation for females to have their hair up in a bun, but they can't put an ACH, they can't put the helmet on with their hair in the bun to go out on a convoy. Uh, so, there was no point in that. But if they had their hair down at all, then there was a first sergeant somewhere coming out of the woodwork to yell at them. Well, we needed to change stuff like that for operational reasons and health reasons. And so I think we do have to listen to our force, and we've got to look at what makes sense, and we've got to be willing to adapt. But we can't get so far away from the standards that nobody can enforce the standards. And I think that's where we were.
Yeah. Well, and I'm envisioning you wearing a ponytail, Tim, and that would not be a good sight, I
Yeah,
don't
that
think.
would not be a good sight. Yeah.
I I think in our previous conversations, we've talked about you writing a book.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Working on it, really, I want to share with people kind of where I come from and what my background is, and the challenges that I faced as a kid growing up, and some of the situations I was in, and you know, there wasn't a lot of really bright future ahead. Um, but I believe anybody can achieve anything that they want to, regardless of where they come from, what their situation is. Yesterday was yesterday, tomorrow's a new day, and I think you have to look at it that way. And so I just want to encourage people. I mean, you know, I never would have seen myself as a command chief in the United States Air Force when I was a teenager. And I never would have seen myself sitting here with a master's degree or sitting on your podcast talking about leadership, because in the kind of way I grew up, that wasn't something that people achieved, and that wasn't something that you did. And I just want people to know that they can achieve whatever they want to. There's greatness in all of us, and I want to share my stories and my leadership lessons that I learned along the way, and empower people to realize that their true potential is out there. They got to go achieve it. And I want to be there to pull people along or push them up the hill wherever I'm at in that process. And if I can, put my words on paper and hopefully inspire and encourage a couple folks to, take that next step and try that thing that seems really hard, because it doesn't matter you know, what happened to you in the past. Tomorrow's a new day for you, and you can go achieve greatness. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at with the book.
And having talked to you a little bit about it before, Tim, you had a pretty rough life. I think everybody is going to would agree, and I hope a lot of people will read the book, because you grew up in some dire circumstances to a large degree, I think. But you got through it,
Yep.
and that's the important thing. In fact,
Hmm.
I have a young man that I know in Salem, Missouri, that I'm anxious to get that book, to give it to him, because he's in the same situation, and I want to encourage him that you can get out of this. You can grow
Yeah.
and become look. You can be Tim Bass. You don't want to look like him, but
That's truth.
but there is something. Uh, he has a great story, and you have a great story and some great advice. Do you have a title for the book yet?
I've kicked around a couple things, kind of. So I have a title for the newsletters I've been writing called Yes You, because I want people to know that yes you, it doesn't matter where you're from, you can do anything, and so that's where the yes you came from, and so it'll be something along those lines. But I'm still kicking around a couple
Yeah.
couple ideas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it'll be exciting. I've written a couple of books, and although it's funny that people always tell you it's about the journey, not the book itself. Nah, when you get the book in your hand, you're gonna say, "Wow, that was so much fun." Yeah, you'll go back and think a little bit, but it's great to have that book in your hand. So,
Yep.
looking forward to it, and hopefully, maybe by the end of the year, maybe.
Yeah, that's the plan, is to
Okay.
have it out by the end of the year. So
Okay. So,
working hard on it.
all right. All right. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, spending all that money in that lottery money that you won. Oh, no, you didn't win the lottery. Okay.
Yeah,
You gotta,
unfortunately, I'm gonna
but
have
you
to.
gotta go play, man. Go play. Because I
I'm
would
gonna go
love to
buy
have
some
a friend
tickets.
who won it, I don't play it myself. I don't have very good luck. So, but the best of luck in everything that you do, my brother. And God bless you. Now, let me ask, I didn't ask you, how many, do you have children? You have children, right?
I do. I have 4 children.
Four. Okay.
And yeah, 4 children, 2 grandchildren, and a grandchild on the way.
Wow.
So
You're
yeah,
a busy
we're a
man,
busy
man.
household.
Yeah. Now, here's the best advice. I have 6 grandkids. Don't spoil them.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Thank you
I will
so
try. I
much.
will try.
God bless you.
Yep. Thanks, Bob. Take care.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you've gained something from this episode that will empower you to become a more effective leader. If you'd like to connect with us, please do so via our website at leadershipandforesight.org. The book So You Want to Be the Chief is available on Amazon.com and on Apple Books. This podcast is powered by the Institute for Leadership and Strategic Foresight.